All right, so Stu, for those that don't know, explain what MSHDA is.
Yeah, Luke, so MSHDA is an awesome down payment assistance program here in the state of Michigan. It's not a loan program itself. It pairs with either a conventional or an FHA loan, and what it really is you could think of it as a silent second loan. So you're not paying any interest on it, you're not making any payments towards it, but it provides up to $10,000 to cover the down payment and closing costs associated with either that conventional or FHA loan you're getting. The really cool thing about MSHDA is that $10,000 isn't paid back until you sell or refinance the home. So basically, you get to borrow that $10,000 up front to help with those closing costs, and then you get to hold on to it basically for free until you're ready to sell or refinance.
Oh, nice. I guess what are the benefits of MSHDA particularly?
Yeah, so your main benefit is going to be that $10,000 of down payment assistance. I mean, that goes a really long way, especially in today's world where it can be tough to save up money, especially enough to buy a house. So to get that $10,000, I would say, is probably your number one benefit of a MSHDA loan program.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge, huge. Who qualifies for MSHDA? What are the requirements?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a list of requirements that MSHDA looks at. So it varies a little bit dependent on your individual situation. To give you some general guidelines, though, we're basically breaking things up into targeted and non-targeted areas when we're talking about MSHDA. So in your non-targeted areas, you do have to be a first-time home buyer, which means basically you didn't have any home ownership interest in the last 3 years. So even if you had a home, but it was 5 years ago, you're now considered a first-time home buyer again. If you're in those targeted areas, you don't have to be a first-time home buyer. There's also going to be some income limitations, so how much you make, that's going to be dependent on the county that you're in, again, targeted versus non-targeted area, as well as your family size. Moving a little on from that, they do have some credit score requirements, and these are pretty important. So basically, their bottom line is going to be a 640 credit score. That's for your stick-built homes, things like that. If you're looking maybe a manufactured double wide, something like that, they are going to look for a 660 credit score. So we do have some credit score requirements on there to be aware of, but really MSHDA does allow for a pretty wide range in terms of who's eligible for that program.
All right, so what are the income limits of MSHDA?
And so MSHDA has a fairly long list for the state of Michigan that's broken up on a county-specific basis, as well as broken into targeted versus non-targeted areas. So depending on where you're at, it can be pretty unique to your situation. My best advice for you in that situation would be to reach out to your loan officer, tell them a little bit about who you are and where you're at, and they'll be able to provide that specific answer in terms of your income restrictions there, depending on where you are, family size, and things like that.
Okay, awesome. And you had mentioned that you get up to $10,000 in down payment assistance. What does that cover? What can you use that towards?
Yeah, absolutely. So that can cover anything from the actual down payment to any of your closing costs and prepaid. So when you're buying a home, there are some costs associated with actually getting the loan. There's also some things that you're going to be setting up in an escrow account. So things like your property taxes, homeowners insurance, that down payment assistance can be spread across all of that.
Now, does the MSHDA process complicate things at all when buying a house?
You know, not as much as some people would think. So yes, there are a few different boxes we're going to be checking up front during your pre-approval. Some of the qualifications I just talked about we're going to be looking at. We're going to make sure that you meet all of those. The other thing or step that we have to take in this process when working with MSHDA is actually sending it to MSHDA. So on a conventional or FHA file, something that we do here in-house all the time, once we've underwritten that file to ensure that it's meeting all the federal guidelines of that loan program, we get the appraisal back, we're clear to close, we're straight to the closing table. With MSHDA, we have an additional step. So we have to send it over to the state of Michigan, and they're going to review the file as well. Now, this is where it's really important to connect with a awesome loan officer, because doing that work up front to make sure that you get a clean review in MSHDA can really save you a lot of time. But it is something to be aware of, because it can take a few extra days to get with the state of Michigan, get their review, and get it back.
Okay, makes sense. Now, if I go MSHDA, is my interest rate going to be higher?
No. So what's really cool about MSHDA is, they set their own rate. So when you're looking into their down payment assistance program or just the regular MSHDA home purchase, they call out what that rate is. So they have a set rate, and it's published on their website, and that's the rate you get. And they do keep it pretty close to where market rates are at that time. I've seen it before where, especially this last year, where rates are pretty volatile. A lot of times the MSHDA rate was a little lower than what you would see with maybe a conventional or an FHA purchase, something like that. So I wouldn't expect it ever to be higher or lower. I would expect it to be right in line with where the market's at, excluding any really volatile times in the market.
So how are the qualifications for MSHDA going to be different than FHA or conventional?
There are stricter credit score requirements. So like we said, that 640 to 660 range is where you really want to be, whereas FHA, without any down payment assistance, is usually eligible to about a 580, with conventional being down to a 620. You're also going to want to keep in mind that FHA and conventional by themselves are a little more flexible when looking at your what's called debt to income ratio. And to keep this really simple and short, what we're looking at is your monthly mortgage payment and other debts compared to your monthly income. They're going to be stricter on that. They want a little bit of a tighter bound on that, so you're not overextending yourself while also getting this down payment assistance. So if you were to reach out, maybe you already got approved FHA or conventional, and you have that max pre-approval price in mind, you might see that down a little bit when you're taking a look at MSHDA, just because they are a little bit tighter on their guidelines. One other thing I did want to point out, Luke, is that MSHDA does have a purchase price limit with how much home you can actually buy. So
how much is that?
They cut that off at $224,500. So you can't go out, you can't buy a $300,000 home and take advantage of the MSHDA down payment assistance. But anything at $224,500 and below is going to be eligible for the MSHDA down payment assistance, which luckily for us here in the state of Michigan, that still opens a lot of doors for you. I mean, there's markets around the world or here in the country where $224,500 wouldn't get you much. Right. If anything, here in West Michigan and Michigan as a whole, you're still going to have a really big selection of houses for you that are available and ready to go. Yeah, new buyers, first-time buyers, and depending on the area, repeat buyers. It's a really great program. That $10,000 it's a zero interest second loan, so you're not making any payments towards it while you're in the home. Really, the only time you have to pay that back is when you go to sell or refinance that home later on. And what's really cool is that here in the state of Michigan, the way properties have been appreciating over the last few years, I've found that 90% of the time, if someone's in that house for 2 to 3 years, they've accrued enough equity in that home that when they do go to sell or refinance, they have that $10,000 there in equity to pay back. So it's not any additional cash out of pocket on that next transaction or that step-up home.
Oh, awesome. And how does that refinance process look with Treadstone?
Yeah, so it's really, really simplified. I always think a refinance is a whole lot easier than a initial purchase. One being you're already in the home, so you're not competing with other buyers. Two being, if we've worked with you in the past, odds are we've got a good amount of your documentation already on hand, and we can really streamline that process.
I guess what other 0% down programs do we have?
Yeah, so there's a couple other in the state of Michigan that we can take a look at. A big one here is rural development, or RD. That's offered through the USDA. Outside of Grand Rapids, Detroit, and a couple other small areas, almost the entire state of Michigan is eligible for the RD program, rural development. And why that is basically it is set up for rural communities. So you can't buy maybe downtown Grand Rapids or downtown Detroit with that program, but outside of there, you do have that option. Another one, if you have some military service, we can look at the Zero Down VA program, which is great program for all of our vets out there, as well as some different odd and end grant programs and other down payment assistance options. There are a few other smaller ones out there. And then another one that's extremely popular is just the conventional 3% down Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac Home Ready or Home Possible programs, which sets you up with a great conventional loan, only 3% down, gives you an awesome break on the interest rate as well as the mortgage insurance. So those are some great options for first-time buyers.
How do I get this MSHDA loan? How do I go about getting this?
So my best advice would be to reach out to either Stu or Luke, which are really awesome loan officers, but really anybody at Treadstone Funding. Any of our loan officers are incredibly well-versed in the MSHDA down payment assistance program. So anyone here is going to be an awesome resource for you in terms of getting that application process started, walking you through the steps, and getting you qualified and making sure that we are checking all the right boxes up front to ensure that you have a smooth transaction.